Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is your look at the astrology for October, uh, 13th through 19th, 2025. So we are hitting the middle of October. It's kind of crazy to think, and actually this week is like the last week of Libra season, which is even crazier because it means that next week, middle of next week is Scorpio season, but not to jump ahead. For those that are watching live, do say hello. It's always nice to see where everybody is watching from. And for those that don't know who I am, again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. Let's not forget about you. So yeah, we're kind of back on schedule. I had a little bit of a hiccup last week because as I was saying, I had to take my dad to the hospital, or rather he was in the hospital. I had to go back down there, and that kind of just got in the middle of this, but it's life. And I wrote about this in my newsletter this week. You know, this idea of how sometimes astrology, it's quite frustrating sometimes, but it makes more sense in hindsight. That's kind of why I mentioned dates. I'm like, go back to this point of time. You know, do you see a connection? And you know, astrology is typically something that's happening, and they're like, oh, right, that's what that is. You know, this week, and in fact, today we have Pluto turning direct at 1 degree of Aquarius. And so, what I was saying in my newsletter, you know, something like Pluto, we don't see it as it's happening. It's there. We go back and we look, and you know, I made a comment, and it's funny because I was writing this, I was like, yeah, I don't really see Pluto yet in my life, and then I was like, wait a second, duh. I'm a Scorpio, and Pluto is going through Scorpio's fourth. And I'm, you know, for those that have been around here long enough, I was in New York City for 20 years, and hopefully, you know, can get back there. What's going on here? Hopefully can get back there. But in the meantime, I'm helping my dad out. I'm in Maryland. So that's how I was like, oh, there's there's the Pluto transit. But you know what I was saying in contrast, last week we had the Aries full moon at 14 degrees of Aries, and Aries is a sign that is immediate. It's you typically see it, you feel it. I had a client who, maybe she's listening, but she, you know, she kind of lost her temper at somebody, and it's not to blame the full moon, but Aries temper kind of go hand in hand. It's one side of the Aries archetype. The other side is to really have the courage, the bravery, the fortitude to be able to start over, to go after what we want. And that energy, it's still with us, even though the full moon was last week, because we are still in the lunar month, the same lunar month that began on September 21st. That lunar month, that new moon was a solar eclipse. Well, I don't know why September 21st feels like a million years ago. I don't know how time is feeling for you, but we are still in a lunar month up until next week. I think it's like next Tuesday, that began with a solar eclipse. So it's still kind of a funny time. It's still a time when the eclipse energy could be taking us in a new direction, showing us something new in our lives. We'd have to see what it means for each of our own lives. And then when we go next week, we have a new moon in Libra. We're beginning to move away from the eclipse energy, but don't forget, we are still in this arc of time that takes us all the way to February of 2026. February 17th, there will be an eclipse. And until then, our like main focus and priority, I'll keep talking about this, I'll, you know, keep drilling it into you all, is Virgo. Virgo is clean things out, organize, streamline, get rid of the things that you don't really need to hold on to anymore. You know, Virgo is an earth sign, but it's earth where the systems of our lives, they run. They run in the way that is the most harmonious or the most supportive for our lives. So I was talking to a friend and she was saying how, I really feel like I just had this huge urge to just streamline. This is my Taurus friend who is very Taurian and has a lot of things. I love her. But, for her to say, I just want to get rid of things and streamline, I was like, that's a big, that's a big change. But how do we all tap into this Virgo energy that's going to take us into next February? So even though we have a new moon next week, that new moon is in a way nested in terms of a storyline nested within this larger arc that's going to take us into February of 2027, almost 2026. Gosh, I almost said 2017. I was like, no, that's not correct. That's not right. So this week, our two main aspects and astrological events are we have Pluto turning direct, which I mentioned a few moments ago. Pluto has a 5-month retrograde cycle, just like all the outer planets. But I think it's what's really important about Pluto turning direct is that this is one of the, if you think about it, it's 2025. So we had a Pluto direct in 2024, but I think that was in Capricorn. And then we had a Pluto direct that was, I think this is like our first, I'd have to go back and look, our first Pluto direct in Aquarius, because we still were cycling out of Capricorn even last year, this time last year. So this is one of those moments, and I don't think it's going to be like just today. I think this is last week. I think this is this week, and possibly even October as a whole, that is giving us a link in a story that, believe it or not, is going to unfold over the next 20 years. I know that's a huge amount of time, and the way things are going these days, I'm like, are we going to make it 20 years? I can't. But wherever Aquarius is in our astrology, that area is under the very beginnings of a major overhaul and shift. That's kind of why I joked in my newsletter. I was like, wait a second, maybe Pluto in Aquarius, it's already happening. Like, I'm not even living in the same state that I was last year, and even the state that I was in before that. So something is beginning. Pluto, it can talk about the need to completely overhaul something. It really depends on the person in the chart. I have seen Pluto really mark distinct chapters and timelines. For some people, Pluto's time is really psychological, getting into the psyche, the soul, the spirit, because Pluto's deep work is to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. I know that's a big statement, but Pluto is an evolutionary planet. It's part of a cohort of planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, whose jobs, as you can imagine, are to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. As humans, we typically don't want to grow. Like, that's the ego side of things. We want things easy. I get it. Me too. That's the part of me that's a human being. But Pluto is an energy, it's a force, really, that we meet at different times in our lives. And, Pluto has such a irregular orbit that it's not the same times than, let's say, my parents' generation. But that said, we have periods, and if you are a Capricorn, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because that was the last 16 years for you. We have periods in our lives where we have to meet the energy of Pluto. We have to face ourselves. We have to look within. We need to look at what about ourselves that we haven't been looking at. Maybe it's been in our unconscious. Maybe it's been something that's been rejected or even projected onto somebody else. And my stock example for Pluto, and maybe this is just, even though it's an example, maybe it gives you a starting point to look at some of your experiences and even your thoughts this week. My stock example is you keep attracting rageaholics into your life. Okay, this is a terrible example, but follow me. Let's just say you have this pattern of attracting people in your life who have anger problems. Like, why do I have these people in my lives who have anger problems? I'm such a mild-mannered, nice, I get along with everybody. But with the energy of Pluto, and this is just an example, it's trying to show you the rage within, I know it's not, it's like I said, it's a very specific example. The rage within that you're not connecting to, you're not acknowledging. It's there. It doesn't magically go away. And so it shows up as a mirror through other people. So that's my stock example. There's a lot of different examples. And so when we have experiences during a Pluto transit or even Pluto turning retrograde or direct, we have to look for the subtext. It's maybe not about this person. It's maybe not about this event. But then what is it? I said to a client once who was having a toxic work situation, you know, who is your boss? Who is your boss really? He kind of looked at me, he was like, what are you talking about? Who was my boss? What it came down to, what he realized, what the big light bulb moment was that he was playing out a parental dynamic through a toxic boss. Here it was, decades later. So that's another Pluto example. And these are very specific examples, and maybe it's not even relevant to your own experiences. But the real power of Pluto is to reveal the unconscious, to reveal the parts of ourselves, the parts of our psyche that we can't see. And in some cases, we've completely, rejected that part of ourselves. And in doing so, not the rejection, but in terms of seeing something, we're able to put light where there was not light before. And that is the real emotional, spiritual alchemy of Pluto. And I'm saying this as a Scorpio, so hopefully this lands. But my joke about Pluto is that it either gives us the rope to hang ourselves with or the rope to pull ourselves up with. So strong examples, strong words, strong archetypes. But then again, Pluto is a very strong planet that really helps us to get to the level of the soul and the soul's experience. And I don't even know if that's what you believe in, but if you've been through a Pluto transit, you know that it completely changes you inside and out, and hopefully for the best. I was having a conversation with somebody else about who was going through kind of a toxic situation in a relationship, and this was Pluto now going into the 7th house of relationships. And she said to me, is this going to be the next 20 years? And I was like, no, of course not. But your work is to understand how you got in the situation in the first place. Again, more strong archetypes. So here we are. We're only 2.5 years since Pluto first entered Aquarius in our lifetime. I realize not everybody knows this, so I'm sorry if I'm saying, repeating myself, but Pluto moves so slowly that it takes 250 years, 248 years to go around the sky. So go around the sun, which means to go throughout the zodiac. And it will spend anywhere from 11 years to 30 years in one zodiac sign. In our lifetime, Pluto, and I'm saying this as somebody who was born with Pluto in Libra, but Pluto was at the shortest part of its cycle. So if you're Pluto in Libra generation like me, it's like 12 years. If you're Pluto in Scorpio generation, I think it's 11 years that Pluto's in Scorpio. That's my joke. That here's proof that God loves us. Pluto spends the least amount of time in Scorpio. But Pluto spends the most amount of time in Taurus and Aries, but that's not going to be in our lifetime. So that said, over the last 16 years, Pluto was in Capricorn, and Pluto was doing its deep reformation and transformation work through the energy and archetype of Capricorn. And if you're saying, but I'm not a Capricorn, why is this relevant to me? Capricorn is both an energy and archetype, which means it's part of life. Capricorn is responsibilities, duties, structures that need to mature and to grow. It's Capricorn. To build, construct, it's Capricorn. Even if you have nothing in Capricorn, it's part of life. But you also have Capricorn somewhere in your astrology where Pluto, and this is the visual I gave my clients at the time, it's like Pluto walked into that room in your astrology house and said, I'm going to rip everything out. So you were doing a very deep work, especially if you were a Libra, a Capricorn, a Cancer, an Aries, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so with Pluto now in Aquarius, that work has shifted to a different space, psychic space, emotional space, physical space within your life. When I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, we'll sort of sit with what space has Pluto brought us into over the last 2.5 years, because Pluto is in the early stages of demoing something. You have to understand that even though this is a conversation about astrology, and you hear me say, astrology is 50%, you're the other 50%, but astrology is just a framework. What wraps around that framework is time and past and memories and ancestors and mom and dad and maybe even some cultural threads as well. And so what Pluto is saying to us now, because again, we're in the early stages of something, this has to go. This doesn't support you anymore. And if I were to put it into a larger context, this is the time that your soul needs to do this work, because you will not live, I'm so sorry, you will not live another 250 years for Pluto to come back to where it is in the sky right now. Pluto was last in Aquarius from the 1780s and the 1790s. Yes, you heard me correctly. So this is the time that your soul needs to do the work of where Pluto in Aquarius is for you. It helps you to dismantle, deconstruct, to reform what is hidden, what is unconscious, what is inherited, what is not yours, and to put something very different there. Maybe when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you won't know what I'm talking about. But it doesn't mean that we can't be proactive with it. If you know that this is a time that is to reform and transform the energy of family and home, past and memories, that could be liberating, because it means that perhaps you get to excise yourself from something that you've carried and maybe was never even yours to begin with. So yeah, strong examples of Pluto and just Pluto as an energy. Like I said, I'm a Scorpio. We can do Scorpio. We're getting Mars is in Scorpio right now. We can talk about Scorpio stuff. And so Pluto is turning direct. And the other thing this week, a very different energy, is that Venus is going into Libra. So Venus, as I record this, has just gone into Libra, and that's a little bit more prosaic. Venus spends about 4 weeks in each of the 12 zodiac signs, as opposed to Pluto's 11 hyphen 30 years. But Venus is the ruler of Libra season. So now that it's in its own sign, it gets strength. So Libra season now has a different energy. This is a little bit of a technical point, but it's an important technical point. This idea of what's called in astrology essential dignity. When a planet is not in a sign that it is at home in, it's weakened. And while I think we can find beautiful facets of Venus and Virgo, and a love of details, a need to invest time in helping people. That and I have a Venus in detriment too. I have Venus in Scorpio, but Venus doesn't get a chance to express itself as it would like to express itself when it's in the sign of its detriment, when it's in Virgo, when it's in Scorpio, when it's in Aries. It has to sort of work counter to its nature. So we've had the past 3 weeks of Libra season with Venus and Virgo. So Venus working against, I think Venus was in Leo at the beginning, I can't remember, but Venus working against its nature. So with Libra, Venus is like, great, finally, I get a chance to be myself. So for us, for the next 7 days, 8 days, 9 days until the sun goes into Scorpio, we have a Libra season where we get to connect and relate and move, because Libra is an air sign. Air needs to move. It needs to exchange. It's partnership. It's relationship. And it's your friendly periodic reminder that Libra is a cardinal sign. Technical point, but it's important. It aligns with the 4 directions. And Libra reminds us, because it's as a cardinal sign, it's one of the 4 pillars of life. Libra holds up the sky along with Aries, along with Capricorn, along with Cancer. We always sometimes don't remember how powerful Libra is. Again, it's a structural part of the zodiac. And it reminds us that we can't do things alone. We can't do life alone. We need people to support us, to help us. And I know maybe we've got some cynical thoughts in our head at this moment, but that's a reality. In order for our life to really have that balance, we need people that we can depend on and rely on. And I know, you're thinking, but, dot, dot, dot. But this is a time, especially at this Libra new moon that we have coming up next week, to really strengthen, connect, make stronger relationships, and even to make relationship with the people who are worth your time and your energy. People who you want to be in partnership. I don't say this as a romantic comment, because it's really about relationships as a whole. So that's the beauty of Libra. It's a sign that really teaches us the power of being polite. When I was teaching my Saturn masterclass, when we got to Libra, I realized that when you hold the door for somebody, when you give them a smile, when you help them, that's very powerful, even though we might think that it's kind of surface. So yes, be courteous, be kind, seek negotiation, try to understand things from the perspective of other people. That's the power of Libra. It is also beauty. It is also harmony, charm, grace. And it's an energy, especially with the Libra new moon that we're going to have next week with Venus and Virgo, that's going to take us into around the middle that third week of November, when we have finally the Scorpio new moon. So those are our big aspects this week. We do have the sun is a little bit more subtle. We do have the sun opposite Chiron. And I'm just sort of saying that, and this is interesting because we also have the Pluto turning direct. Take note, observe yourself, observe the emotions that are coming up. And again, what is it truly about? Is it really about this person or this situation or this thing, or is it something deeper? Because with the sun opposite Chiron, there's a pain point that's getting activated this week. It's very subtle. It's kind of in the subconscious and perhaps even the unconscious, but maybe that pain point is around self-worth and value. Maybe it's around voice. Maybe it's, in the case of Chiron and Aries, having the courage and bravery to do something, to stand on your own 2 feet, to go after what you want, to fight for yourself. That's the power of Aries. So that's a little bit subtle, but I think that with Pluto turning direct, we got a lot of deep emotional and psychic material in the ethers this week, and a lot of good opportunities, of course, to heal. And Chiron for me is that knot that we are all trying to undo. And that knot it gets a little bit looser when we take the things that have made us suffer the most and we use it like medicine to help and inspire other people. So that is your look at the astrology of this week. We're going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs and talk a little bit about Pluto. The power of Pluto is just your friendly periodic reminder that you can always book a consultation with me, because I love working with you one-on-one. I know some of you are my clients, and I work very uniquely in the sense that I bring people into not just their astrology, but also the space of their astrology. So we go through what are called your 12 rooms, and we can learn about what do we find in each of your 12 rooms in your astrology house, and how your life was built, and perhaps even for what purpose was your life built. So you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, and book a consultation with me. So let's go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and Mars is chugging along in its own sign of Scorpio. So Mars is in a sign that it's very powerful in, it's in its home sign, but it's pulling you, continuing to pull you into a space in your own personal astrology where you need to do some emotional heavy lifting. The role of Scorpio, and you can see it, I realize this is a comment, maybe doesn't make sense if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, but if you're in the Northern Hemisphere like me, it's a time when the seasons are changing. We're not in Scorpio season yet, but Scorpio reminds us that all things end, all things have to change so that something new can come in its place. So you're in a season, although this is going to take you until November 4th, where you need to look deep within. You need to see what's coming up. It could be a fear, it could be insecurity, it could be really opening up your intimacy, your vulnerability, having a conversation with somebody. But you're in a period, again, that takes you into the beginning of November that's pushing on some deeper emotional and psychic buttons. Maybe it's financial, maybe you're thinking about assets and the future and setting up an estate. I know that's more of a traditional way to look at Scorpio, but it still works. So let's talk about Pluto. For you, Aries, you had 16 years. I know that's a long period of time. You had 16 years of Pluto in your career sign. You all lived this time differently. Career means different things to different people. But this space isn't just about career. It is your ability to stand in a duty, a responsibility, to have a public life, to really push yourself towards something. It is career, it is your professional life, but ultimately it is to be in some role that takes time and maturity in order to achieve it. Pluto has now, well, as of the last 2.5 years, has gone into your 11th sign. So this is going to mean different things to different Aries. But the role of the 11th is about community. It's to make community, connect to community. It's friends, it's your social circle. But the real power of the 11th is to really connect us to the whole. It's where we become aware of the world, and whether that's social issues or social causes, whether that's a little bit more in our community that's outside our front door. And again, this is going to mean different things to different Aries, but you're in the early stages of reforming and transforming your relationship with the collective, your relationship with friends, your relationships with community. And maybe the people that are in your life right now may not be there in the next 10 to 15, 20 years. I know it's a long period of time, but with Pluto now direct, or at least direct, later in the next few hours, feel out how your relationship with the community or your relationship with humanity is beginning to shift. Maybe this is an energy that really pulls you to take more action, to be more involved. Maybe it's making you more cynical. Maybe you're shifting your friend group. But whatever is happening, and I should have said this in the introduction for everybody, whatever is happening is deeply personal to you and your soul's journey and what you're trying to grow and evolve. Taurus. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus has just arrived back home into Libra. So you had about 4 weeks of Venus in Virgo. It's time for you to kind of get organized, get focused, but also get back to the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. Now, Venus in Libra, you get that double dose of Venus. You feel more that sort of relaxed energy of Venus. It wants to enjoy life. It wants to enjoy the physicality of life. But this part of your chart is what's called your six. It's a time to really get organized, to look at your day-to-day life, to put things in order, to show up on time. And for some Tauruses, this is a time that's also about health and wellness, needing to take care of your body. And maybe that includes a massage. Maybe you want to, feel nice. And this is going to take you over the next 4 weeks. So you can use this to be very practical, to organize your home, to create beauty in your surroundings, to get in, to really get involved in sort of practices and rituals. And that's going to all prepare you for when Venus goes into Scorpio in 4 weeks' time. And that's going to be about relationship. Let's talk about Pluto. So it's important to understand that your experiences with Pluto will relate on 2 main points. One, it's very deeply personal to your life. Not every Taurus is going to go through the same transit. This is, Pluto going into Aquarius is what's called transit. Also, it depends on your own Pluto. Where Pluto was when you were born, what part of the chart it's in. So that's going to mitigate what Pluto's time in Aquarius means for you. So that said, Aquarius is your 10th. It is the highest point in your astrology. That highest point in your astrology represents the title after your name, the role that you play in the world, your sort of greater sense of duty and responsibility and maturity. It is your career. It can be your career, your professional life, and your public life. So over the last 2.5 years, Pluto has gone into this space. Now I'm taking a leaf out of Aries' notebook because Aries had Pluto in this space previously for the last 16 years. And I saw a lot of different things with my Aries clients. I saw Aries clients that completely change careers. I saw Aries clients step into greater roles of power and responsibility. So again, it really depends on what's going, your own life and your own, let's say your own journey and evolution as a soul. So Pluto in the 10th is really talking about a time to transform, reform your relationship with power, responsibility, your career, maybe to change careers, but look for what the story has been so far since March of 2023 and how that's starting to give you some clues on what this time could be about. And even if you're thinking, but hey, wait, I don't want the next whatever many years to be about what I've been experiencing the last 2.5 years, it's not going to be that. It's setting up the story, but it's trying to illuminate something for you so there is an evolution. And so it's for you to feel out, not think out, but feel out, what is it in your professional life or your public life that wants to now transform into something completely different. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet. Mercury is still in Scorpio. Scorpio is something called your, goodness gracious, your sixth sign. So it's a time to really focus on your work, your projects, getting organized, getting cleaned out, and even your health and wellness. So it's like, when does Mercury go into Sagittarius? So this is until the 4th, so that's when Mercury goes into Sagittarius. So it's kind of a grind at the moment. You got things to do, you've got responsibilities to take care of. Let's talk about Pluto. And Pluto, as of March of 2023, but really as of November of 2024, is in your 9th. Now, the 9th is not a space that feels very concrete and tangible because it's a space that helps us to look outside of ourselves. Let me explain. Imagine a life where every day is the same. You do everything the same. You don't read any books. You don't learn. You don't have any curiosity about the world. Do you grow? No, you don't. The role of the 9th is to get us to look outside of ourselves. And in some cases, to travel, to see the world, to get a degree, or to learn and to become worldly and cultured in some way. And the 9th is also about faith. The faith of what you believe in, what you stand for. For some people, that means religion, but if the faith doesn't have to necessarily be religion. So it's a very subjective time for a Gemini because it really depends on who you are and the life you've lived and the world that you live in and the world that you see around you. So for some Geminis, you're at the beginning of completely overhauling, reforming, transforming how you think, how you see the world, what you believe in, what you stand for. For some of you, it'll be very much through an educational lens. You're starting a degree, and that degree is going to really transform your relationship with philosophy and how you see the world and how you interact in the world, your convictions. For some of you, it's through travel. It's not to say that you're going to constantly travel for the next 20 years, but maybe your experiences in different cultures and different ways of thinking are really shifting and shaping and transforming how you see yourself and how you see the world. And for some of you, it could be around a sense of justice, a sense of what's right and wrong. You need to identify what is it that is beginning to come up in your life, because I realize 20 years is a long time. We just can't, hit the magic wand and suddenly it's 20 years later. But this area of your life will look different. That's what Pluto is trying to do. So if Pluto is trying to get you to realize that you're seeing things too small, then this is the start. For example, this is the start of dismantling anything that's in the way of you seeing things too small. Cancer. So the moon is your planet. The moon this week, it's going from, where's the moon right now? I just completely forgot. The moon is in It's in Cancer. It's conjunct Jupiter right now. The moon is in Cancer, your sign. So you start the week with a sense of reset, new initiatives, new beginnings, because you have a monthly cycle. That's, the moon takes 28, 29 days to go through the zodiac, and then the moon is going to go all the way to Libra by Sunday. So if Cancer represents your first sign, new beginnings, reset, taking action, then when you get to Tuesday and Wednesday, it's Leo, it's your money, it's your income, material stability and security. You get into towards Thursday and Friday into Saturday, and the moon goes back to Virgo. And I wanted to highlight that because we've gone one cycle again. The lunar month is 28, 29 days. We've gone one cycle since that solar eclipse on September 21st. For you, that solar eclipse wasn't hitting on big points. It's more about education and travel, ideas, information, how you think, how you listen, how you learn. And with the moon going back into Virgo this weekend, not on Sunday, it goes into Libra on Sunday, but Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, it is a time to revisit the themes of the eclipse. And maybe that you don't really see what the eclipse means for you so far. I mean, it's only been 4 weeks, but maybe as you go into this weekend, you're like, oh, here's an opportunity where I need to start write a manuscript, or, I'm looking to take a class, or I need to really believe in my voice. It's for you to see what that is specific for your life. Then there's Pluto. So Pluto, and as a Cancer, the past 16 years Pluto was in a part of your chart that talked about relationships. There's a big evolution for Cancers, particularly the Cancer suns, because Pluto is opposite the Cancer sun, that I think on some level is leading you into the past 2.5 years and what this new time means for you. Pluto is now in something called your eighth. The eighth is a part in our astrology. We all have an eighth. I call it the eighth room, where we go in order to face ourselves. And this is a time where your emotional and psychic landscape will continue to transform and evolve over the coming years. I realized Saturn was in this space 2020, 2021, 2022. And on some levels, Saturn was really setting up something, and 20 years is a really long time. But I guess if you're the type of person, this just for example, if you're the type of person that takes everything and just shoves it into a corner, Pluto's like, we got some work to do. So the eighth is a space where we face the deepest parts of ourselves. And if you've ever been to therapy, you've been to the eighth room. And through this facing of our deepest self, we really discover the true self. We are able to open up and to transcend into our higher self, and our higher self leads us into the ninth room. So what has been happening over the past couple of years, again, it's going to be different for each Cancer, is to strip away the facets of the ego that aren't really you. It could be the past, it could be parental, you realize you've been living like your mom and it's not really you, or trauma. Just strip that away so that you can discover the power of the real you. Leo, the sun is your planet, and the sun right now is in Libra, so we have a little mixture of Libra's air to your Leo fire. Libra is something called your third sign. It is a space for you to shine a light, your Leo light, through a sign that talks about voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. It's a time to be curious, to see new things, to move. Maybe you're having lots of conversations. Maybe you're writing something. Maybe you're taking classes. Maybe you're just traveling a lot. It's for you to see how this time is really manifesting itself for you, and especially now that Venus is also in Libra. We'll come back to this space next week because you will have a Libra new moon here, but let's talk about Pluto. So you're a fixed sign, Leo. What are the fixed signs? The fixed signs are the 4 signs of the zodiac, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, and Scorpio, that really anchor us in our physical world. With Taurus, it's like the money, our property, our assets. Leo, we need to have a strong sense of self through Leo. We all have, my joke is like, we all have a sun, even if our sun is not in Leo. So we need to have a strong sense of self, creativity, passion. I've met plenty of Leos at this point in my career where it's like, but I don't want to be seen. But I'm like, but God made you Leo. I got to be seen somehow. But anyway, so Pluto is now in your seventh. I shouldn't say now because it's really been over the last 2.5 years, but Pluto is in your seventh sign of relationships. And over the last 2.5 years, something has been shifting. And maybe it's a seismic shift, and maybe it's a quiet seismic shift, but something's been shifting. This is a space where it's built of the patterns of how we connect and relate and socialize with people. If you're the type of person who is very self-reliant and you don't need anybody, Pluto's like, of course you need, you have a seventh, you need people. It's not to lose your independence, or maybe you're the opposite. It's for you to discover what are the patterns that are in this space that Pluto is beginning to deconstruct. So some evolutionary arc is going to happen around relationship over the coming years. You may start a relationship that's very different than previous relationships. You may deconstruct an existing relationship. Maybe it's to stand up for yourself. Maybe it's to draw boundaries. Maybe it's something else. But Pluto, it is a big work. And even if you're single and it's crickets, but you're not living alone in the woods. So there is something that you have people in your life. So Pluto is there, and it's for you to see, like, what is Pluto showing you? Because Pluto always shows us the unconscious. And those unconscious patterns are typically playing out through relationships. It's how it works. We're human beings. So if there is an issue with somebody, even if it's somebody that's in your office or somebody at the coffee shop, what is that showing you about you? It's just a question just to reflect on, because Leos in general are the beginnings of a seismic shift, and Pluto is really driving that seismic shift in their life. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury, it's still in Scorpio until the 4th of November. So for you, the energy of your sign is really focused on Scorpio, a sign that's about research, getting to the bottom of mystery. Scorpio is part of my language, like a no BS sign. And so maybe your conversations, your interactions, or even your perceptions are a bit sharp. You're not here to continue to play into anybody's illusions, for example. It's a very sharp, perceptive, intelligent place for Mercury to be, and maybe that's reflected in your experiences. This is a time to research, as I've said before, to get to the bottom of mystery, to have conversations that really help to reveal or even to illuminate something that perhaps was hidden. That said, let's talk about Pluto. So Pluto is now in Aquarius, and Aquarius is something called your sixth sign. The role of the sixth sign in our astrology is kind of not unlike Virgo. It's a space that we need to learn to put things in order, to have a sense of responsibility, to have a sense of schedule. It's your health and wellness, and we all have different lives, but we pretty much as humans have these things that we need to do on a day-to-day basis. We get up, we go to work, we have the things we have to do, or perhaps we're raising a family, or maybe we don't have a family, but something is beginning to shift about a part of your life symbolically, astrologically, that talks about the operations that run your life. So what has changed, in the operations that run your life over the past 2.5 years? Has your schedule really changed? Have you, is it health and wellness related? Because the six is also how, the operations and how we take care of our physical being. Are you making changes in your diet? Are you making changes in your day-to-day life and your habits? Are you cutting things out? Are you doing more of the things you're supposed to do? It's going to be very specific to you and your own life, but if there is something that you need to make a lasting positive change in your health and wellness, then here's Pluto. But something about the operations, sort of the systems that run your life, it's changed. Let me kind of give a little bit more of an esoteric example. A lot of the times the operations that run our life are unconscious. We do things because that's the way that we're quote unquote supposed to do. That's the way that our parents did it. That's the way our mom told us to do it. But, we never took a moment to see or feel if that's exactly what we want our lives to be like. So Pluto is like, why are you running the script that's not your script? It's a parental script. It's somebody else's script. It's a societal expectation. That could be one way in which Pluto is playing out this time. Again, feel for it, listen to it. It's typically those like, maybe I should start doing this. Maybe I should go for walks more or whatever. And that maybe is Pluto starting to show that this part of your life is beginning to shift. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet and Mars is in Scorpio. So you've got the strength and drive and power of Mars being in its own sign. So what are you doing with it, Scorpio? Because typically when Mars is in the first, it's about you, your wants, your needs, your desires, really feeling like you've got your hands on the steering wheel, so to speak. So use this energy for leadership, use this energy to really, I will go back to Libra. Let me just sort of finish my thank you. Let me finish my Scorpio thought. I'm jumping ahead to Scorpio. Scorpio. So you have that's it. Mars is in Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio. I'm just jumping right ahead with Mars and Scorpio. So it's just to feel what this has been for you over the past, couple of weeks that Mars has been in Scorpio, especially with that Aries full moon that we had last Monday. That said, it is your reset. This is the only time that Mars will be in Scorpio for 2 years because Mars runs on a 2-year cycle. So there's that. Venus is now in Libra. Venus is in your 12th sign. It's about also connecting to your intuition during this time. I'm sorry, Libra. I'll go back to Libra in just a second. Going back to getting in touch with your intuition. So maybe I'll just go to Pluto in the 4th. So over the past 2.5 years, Scorpio, Pluto has now gone into what's called your 4th, which represents the base and foundation of your astrology. It holds up the astrology chart. And this space, it is both literally your address, it's where you live, it's your home, it's your family, it's your past, it's your memories. But it's also a sense of home. It's the sense of the anchor within and where you belong, a sense of stability and security. And of course, Scorpio, you're going to live this in a way that's specific for your own life, but it's to begin to notice, how has there been any shifts in this part of your life? Has there been a move? Has there been something with family? Has there been something about really feeling like you need to change how you get your needs met, how you get fed, how you get supported? Now, I know I've said this already, but to say it again, it's going to be specific for your own life, because even if it's a move, it's really about the subtext of what's underneath that move, because that move might have been really motivated to really make a change and transformation in your life. Maybe to move away from a situation that was no longer supporting you and nourishing you. Or maybe it's something else, because Pluto is the energy of reformation and transformation. And even though I use traditional rulers, I know Scorpio is modern ruled by Pluto, but there's still that, I think, that affinity between Scorpio and Pluto. Pluto is the need to completely gut renovate something. And this is like the guts of the chart, so to speak. This is getting back into your earliest memories. It's ancestral patterns. It's the, sort of this unconsciousness around the influence of your parents. And Pluto is trying to shine a light on a space that we don't typically shine a light on it. This is the space of the subconscious. It's the space that's the domain of the moon. The moon is, something that's the subconscious and the subliminal. So things are beginning to come up, and especially if past is a, sort of a capital P in your life, and maybe you still carry things, but this is where Pluto is really giving you the opportunity to transform, to reform, to excise anything from the past, anything that's no longer supporting you, so that you can replant yourself in life. Now I'm going to go back to Libra. I'm so sorry. I'm glad that I caught that. So, and I'm glad that you caught that too. So Libra, I don't know why I jumped over Libra. So Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is now in its own sign. So I know that you've got like one more week or so left of your season. And if you're born on the last week of Libra, you're getting that boost from Venus being in your own sign. And even if you weren't born at the end of Libra, you're now getting the energy of Venus in its own sign. So it is to give you a sense of renewal, new beginnings. Venus has about a year cycle, so every year Venus gets back to Libra. So use this to reinvigorate something about your life, to start something new, maybe to feel like yourself. Maybe it's your birthday season if you're a Libra sun, to make a wish. And to this thing, when Venus comes to our sign, or your sign, because you're Libra or Libra rising or Libra sun, it is to set off on a new adventure, a new journey. And maybe Venus is really stirring a sense of like, what do I want to create over the next 12 months? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And to really sit with that energy now that Venus is in Libra. And you will have the Libra new moon next week. We'll talk about that next week. And that will be the reset for your season. So that said, let's talk about Pluto. As a Libra, you had Pluto over the past 16 years in something called your fourth sign, home, family, roots, foundation. So Pluto has since moved out of that space, but I wanted to at least say that within context of what Pluto is doing now, because as a Libra, that was a big transit for Libra. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with Libra rising clients over the years, and I really heard, some of you, the big changes and transformations that took place in the domain of home and family over the last 16 years. So that chapter is over. It's always to benefit from the work that you have done, the space that has been cleared. And now Pluto is in something called the fifth sign. The fifth is about the self. It's not the instinctual self. This is the self, and I'm saying this in a positive way. It's the ego self. It is, who are you, your personality, things that really make you you and how you express yourself. And we need ego. We need, the fifth is a place where we get to really connect with the spark of who we are, and do the things that light us up and give us joy. It gives us passion. It gives us the ability, for some of you, to create if you're artistic, but creativity is really when we take the best of who we are and we put it into something. So sort of the rhetorical question to kind of keep going back to is, who are you? Because what Pluto is doing on some level over the next 2 decades, is to strip away who you are not. There's a lot of things that get in the way of who we are. It could be the past, it could be cultural, it could be parental, but it is to begin to reveal who you truly are. In the core and the spirit of who you are. This is the part of you that cannot be replicated. It cannot be duplicated. And this is the part of you that really is the essence of who you are. Now, identity and self means different things to different Libras, because you're like, I know exactly who I am, Katie. What are you talking about? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's to begin to feel for what is Pluto beginning to transform, or at least present, that needs transformation in your life around the self identity. And then maybe in some cases, how you take yourself and take your talents seriously. I'm just saying this to say that's not that this is you, but for some people, Pluto through the fifth is to look at self destruction and to really navigate and to hopefully make better choices where you can positively affirm the self. But just to take it a little bit further, self-destruction comes in a lot of different forms. You can talk terrible about yourself in your head, and that is self-destruction. So who you think you are, maybe that's changing. It's not to become somebody that you're not, it's to become the person that you always were. Well, we already did Scorpio, so now we're going to Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter, as we know, up until next July, is going to be in Cancer. This continues to be a time to look inward, to look at the psyche, to get into themes of past and memories, and maybe even to release things. But let's turn our focus towards Pluto. Now, Pluto is now, as of over the last 2.5 years, is in something called your third sign. It's not the dramatic transit like it is for some of the other zodiac signs. The third represents our voice, how we think, how we listen, how we learn. It is both the mechanics of speech and thinking and listening, but also this idea of voice on a more subtle level. Do you know your voice? Do you know the power of your voice? So Pluto over the coming years is to remove anything that's in the way of you being able to truly express yourself. Voice is something that's both literally your ability to speak, your ability to make sound, your ability to have words. My words are not good right now, but it's also your ability to take what is within you, your spirit, the thing that makes you you, and to put it into your words so that your words are yours. It's not your parents, it's not a partner's, it's not some friends, it's yours. And so when I talk about the deep work of the third within the context of other planets and maybe with other clients, I always say, don't be a cover artist in your own life. Sing your songs, metaphorically speaking, of course, unless you sing. And so Pluto is starting this process of not taking, but really stripping anything that is in the way of you truly being able to express yourself. Maybe it is to know the power of your mind, your ability to write, to speak. Maybe it is to teach. And I'm saying this as a Scorpio because Scorpio had this transit in Capricorn over a 16-year period. When I used to talk about Pluto's time in the third from a Scorpio perspective, I would say, I couldn't have done this in 2008. Of course, the technology wasn't there, but I couldn't have done this in 2008 because I wouldn't have been able to speak. That was reflective of my own work to transform and reform my voice. It doesn't mean that you need to do something like this, if you're a Sagittarius, but it is to find the power of your voice in the way that feels relevant to your own life. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet. We've got 4 more months left of Saturn's time in Pisces. I know you're sort of crossing off the days. This is a time over the next 4 months to really integrate the lessons of Saturn and Pisces. On one hand, the lessons of Saturn and Pisces are intuitive, emotional, and spiritual. I think sometimes Saturn and Pisces is one of the hardest places for Saturn to be because it means you're learning something that you can't quantify. There is no metric for Pisces. Maybe the metric is how you feel, but ultimately it is to make peace, to let go, to forgive, to not carry the things that you've been carrying. It is to find your unity within yourself, to exhale. The third is also the voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. And so, on a very practical level, the last 2.5, 3 years have been about your education on some level, taking classes, learning, writing more, using the faculties of your mind more. But on a deeper level, it is for you to be able to know yourself, to know your voice, to be able to be able to speak the words that are truly your words. And maybe you wrote a manuscript, maybe you're taking classes, maybe you're speaking more. But the space is also, I've noticed, about really making powerful choices. And because you're Capricorn, very often those choices involve commitments. The choices that are really going to set you up for the coming years, because whatever choices that you're making between now and February, they have a deeper symbology to them, and they're going to take you into 2026 and 7 and even into 8 and beyond. Because when Saturn goes back into Aries on February 13th, it's a sort of a going back to that sort of shift of seasons in your life. It's a new priorities, and those priorities are going to be focused on home and family, setting up a family, setting up a home, settling down, needing to take care of a parent. It really depends on what life stage you're in. But it's like a big time to be a Capricorn, but it's like everything is like in the wings, so to speak. So use this time wisely. Now let's talk about Pluto in Aquarius. And as a Capricorn, you had Pluto in your sign for 16 long years. That reshaped and transformed who you are. Pluto is now in your second. I mean, it has been for the last 2.5 years. And the second is about the money you make, your sense of value and worth, the things you invest in, the resources that you have available to you. It's your relationship with the material plane. And that part of your life is on the early stages of a complete overhaul and transformation. For some Capricorns, it is a time in your life where you have wealth. For some Capricorns, maybe it's the opposite. But it's on a deeper level. It's like, how are you using that money? How are you using those assets? Or how are you transforming and changing your relationship around money, income, material stability, and security? Because Pluto is always about getting into the stuff that's underneath, the patterns. It could be dismantling feelings about lack or unworthiness, or even anxieties around not having enough when you clearly have plenty. I always think of my mom, where she just had this like sort of robot repeat narrative where it's like, there's never enough money. I don't have enough money. She had money, but that was like her, whatever reason. And maybe it's because she was raised in an environment where there was economic instability. That's an example where, if that's the case for you, then Pluto is about dismantling something that's taking you away from yourself or taking you away from feeling safe and secure. It's the early stages of this story. It's to really feel into, observe the last 2.5 years and what have been the themes around money, property, self-worth and value, safety, stability, and security. And it's going to be relevant for your own life and in terms of what needs to now grow and evolve. We did Capricorn. We need to do Aquarius. So Aquarius, you've got a big deal transit that's going on, and we've talked about this periodically for the last 2.5 years. But if you are an Aquarius or Aquarius rising, you now have a visitor. You have Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto has never been in Aquarius unless you are 250 years old, which I'm pretty sure you're not. I don't know, surprise me. But unless you're 250 years old, you've not had Pluto in Aquarius. This is the start of something. Whatever it is very unique and personal to your own life. It is the beginning of a stage, a chapter, one where something needs to be cleared so that something else can come in its way. This is the example I used to give to my Capricorn clients when we would talk about Pluto's arrival in Capricorn back in 2008, except now we're talking about Aquarius. It is as if Pluto walked up to the front door of your life in 2003, 2004 and said, Aquarius, I'm here to rip everything out. And you're like, nope, delete, cancel, I don't want that. Here's the thing. What are you going to do with Pluto? because something needs to change. It needs to transform. It could be what you've built your life on. It could, I know it's a big statement. It could be a belief about yourself. It could be, I don't know, but something is beginning, and it's representing the early stages of a tectonic shift in your life. Maybe you have left a marriage. Maybe you have left the state. Maybe you have, I don't know, but Pluto, for one Aquarius, is about finding your power. For another Aquarius, is about stripping away anything that's not truly you. But it is something that will unfold in different stages over the coming years. And when you look back at 2023 and 4 and into 5, you will see the early stages of a big shift. Pisces. Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet. Jupiter is still in Cancer. That's not really the big focus this week, even though this is a time to continue to nourish the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. But let's talk about Pluto. Pluto turning direct today, October 13th, as I record this. It is the early stages of a story that will unfold over the coming years and in reality the next 2 decades. You are in the early stages of a shift around money, income, material stability, and security. This isn't about having more of it or having less about it. There's just something around patterns. It could be patterns around self-worth and worthiness and receptivity. It could be about dismantling patterns that aren't yours. They're parental patterns around money and income, or their parental or their ancestral patterns, or your grandparents. You have a grandparent that went through the Depression. You have a grandparent that survived the war, and that is so woven into yourself that you're like, how do I take this out because it's not mine? Pluto is always a deep work of reformation and transformation at the level of the soul. In some cases, it means to change how you earn a living or change what you invest your time and money in. It could be property, it could be assets, but it will be something that's very specific to your own life and your own journey as a soul. And maybe what you thought you needed in 2023 and 4 is not what you realize what you truly need by the time you get into the 2030s and even into the 2040s. I know that sounds like we're all going to be in the Jetsons, but that's the length of the time of Pluto's time in Aquarius is 20 years. So whatever you are experiencing right now, it's not going to be for the next 20 years. It's just part of something that's setting up a very personal, powerful transformation around money, material stability, security, like your assets, your resources, and in some cases to really transform and reform your self-worth and value, because how you value yourself very often gets into how you earn a living, and sometimes the dollar sign you put with your work. But it is to be able, for some of you, to really know your value and worth and to be able to command that value and worth on a monetary level. But it's for you to see how this is relevant to your own life and to what this bigger story that's beginning to emerge. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, October 13th through 19th, 2025. I'm so sorry I jumped over Libra. We went back. It was a team effort. And I appreciate you all. You can book a consultation with me. You can go to empoweringastrology.com. We can really do some deep Pluto work together because I'm a Scorpio. I love that sort of thing. You can also follow me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. You can sign up for my newsletter, also my website, empoweringastrology.com, or go to the link in the show notes. And I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.